Hey folks, welcome to this look at one of the things in Worldographer that I get questions about occasionally, and that is how to configure the grid so that you can have a square grid on a hex-based map and vice versa, because Worldographer by default, for most map types, whether it's your world kingdom region stuff, your settlement stuff, your cosmic maps, star maps type stuff, those are all hex-based. However, our battlemats are actually square-based, but you can put a hex grid on those. Whereas with the other styles that are hex-based, you can put a hex grid on top of those. So let's talk about how to do that, which is all about this cog gear configure icon down here on the bottom next to grid. If we pull this up, it gives us a dialog that gives us a lot of detail. Most of this is not necessary. Most of it is all about the functionality for having multiple map levels within your same world map, where you can kind of have a continent view where you might have like 6 hexes across per hex in the world view, and then drill down again to a kingdom view and even a province level view with even more detail. So this functionality is mostly about that. Really, we only use the first one, the first section for the most part. You can turn off the grid by just toggling off the checkbox down there, or you can just set the width to 0, or you can set the color to transparent. All of those are different ways to turn off the grid. In fact, another way would be to turn off the grid layer here on the side over there. But I just wanted to show you that does in fact turn off the grid, and of course you can change the color there. So without any further ado, let's show what it looks like with a square grid. Let's do it in addition though, so that you can see what they look like together. See both kind of and how they line up with how they would line up with each other. So clicking OK brings us this. And you can, I'm going to zoom way in here. And we're actually not really that square. It's kind of rectangular because of the shape of the underlying hex. So we can adjust that in a moment, but I just wanted to show that first of all. And like I said, if we do want to turn off the grid, we can just uncheck that box or uncheck this box over here. Either way, we manage to turn that off. So now let's use a square grid instead, and just for the sake of argument, let's give it a slightly different color. Let's give it a medium dark gray here instead, and I hope you can see it. That's a little bit different. It is. So especially you can see, well, I don't know how zoomed in, how the YouTube video resolution will be, but I can see a little bit of the gray overlapping the that there. In fact, if you want your grid underneath your features and stuff, you can drag these around, and so I can say I want it underneath those features, and now that little gray line that was kind of overlapping that is now under it. So that's another thing you can do. So if you want your grid, your square grid, to be a little bit more square, we uncheck this preserve aspect ratio button, and we're actually going to turn this down because of the the width and the height shaping of the being different on your hexes. We actually need to make the height a little bit smaller here to kind of get it to match, and that's roughly square. You can play with it to get the right look for you to match it up, but that's how you would do it. Now you're still going to see the terrain, the hex-shaped terrain underneath there, because that's a function of Worldographer's terrain data model by default makes these things hexes, and so potentially we could put into one of our upcoming feature polls. We've been doing polls throughout Worldographer 2025's release, and I should point out that all this functionality would apply to Worldographer pre-2025, the current demo of the preview of Worldographer 2025, as well as Worldographer going forward, Worldographer 2025 going forward. It's largely the same. I mean, if we go back to Worldographer 3 years ago or 5 years ago, something like that, there's probably some differences in how it works, but this functionality has been pretty stable, and I don't see it having a major rewrite in the near future. But we could have some enhancement where we say, hey, if your grid is square based, do you want to have your terrain tiles be square? So that's something that we could put in one of our polls. We've been doing a number of polls recently with the recent crowdfunding that just completed for Worldographer 2025. And once that functionality kind of gets written, I foresee continuing that on with having polls to our supporters for additional features to add into the program. All right, now with that out of the way, I will just, to keep this very brief, the settlement functionality for settlement maps for your cities and villages, which are mostly top-down buildings, exactly the same. No point in showing all of that functionality again there. However, for our battle mats, it is reversed. So the data model is square based, and we would want to, if you wanted to have hexes though, you could do so. So we can go up to the configure icon, and we can say in addition, so we can just see what both look like. And to show the difference, let's change the color to like this maroon, so that our square is maroon and our hexagons are going to be black. Hit OK, and sure enough, that's what we get. Now you can see that the hexes are compressed. So again, if you want to change that, you would be changing the tile height to match. But I think that games that use this kind of thing understand that the hexes aren't going to be perfect, and might even account for that. But if you can't account for that, if you don't want to account for that, you can just change these heights and see if 110 is enough. And I think that actually might be enough. And maybe we need one or two more or one or two less, I don't know. That does mean that your various furniture is going to be a little bit off, but so your bed is it allows if you're tall, it just makes your bed a little bit bigger. So it's not a major deal breaker to me. Maybe our well, for example, since that's circular, does get a weird shape to it. So I can go into features and I can hit select, and I can select this, and I can override the height, and I can set the height to be, so it's rotated. So let's set the rotation to 0 first of all. And then I can set the height to, like 75% instead, and get back to roughly a circular shape, for example. And then, we can go back to our grid configuration and say that we want the hex grid only, so we can turn off the square grid. Hit OK. And there we have it. Let me deselect that. So, and then finally, just to touch on it, just like what we were saying with the settlement maps and the similarity in the hex grid, hex square grid functionality with your world kingdom maps, the cosmic maps for your star maps, star subsector maps, that's all the same as well as those three. It's really only the battle mats that have the opposite approach, where it's square based, but you can put a hex map on top, or a hex grid on top. So there you have it. That's all about your grid options, a hex grid versus square grid in Worldographer. And this applies to Worldographer 2025. Going back Worldographer several years. I don't know exactly how long, but this functionality has been pretty stable. So I hope this is helpful to you. We'll link you to more instructions about Worldographer and the downloads and all that kind of stuff as well. Hope that you can make some good maps with the tool. Thank you.